Welcome to the discussion on ballots, B and D. My name is Carmen Larson. I'm the president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for Montgomery County. I'm also on the committee to say no to B and D. And what we're going to do today is to talk a little bit about what these questions are that are going to appear on the ballot or have appeared on the ballot. I had a ballot here someplace, but don't seem to have it handy. But there are 4 questions that appear on the Montgomery County side of the ballot. And if you are first time looking at it, it gets very confusing because some things sound really great, but they have other consequences that might not be so great. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about what these questions say. And then Councilmember Albornoz will join us to talk about his viewpoint and how he feels that, where he feels that it would be an advantage to vote one way or the other, and he will talk to us about that. Before we go into that, I think that I want to make a couple of points about voting. First of all, voting enrollment, or if you haven't registered to vote, you can still do so until October 13th online, so it won't take very long. I think there was there's a website, right, Emma, that they can go to. I have it on my Facebook page. Yeah. Carmen Larson, I posted that, but I know that it's on the Maryland registration, right? Voter registration.
Yeah, it's I think we'll post it online too, but
all right. So here's a couple of things I wanted to say before I turn it over to Emma to talk about the questions. Do you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Okay. So a lot of times people go in and get this ballot and they say, I don't understand these questions, so I'm going to leave it blank. And the problem with leaving them blank is that you're basically giving the right to decide to the people who didn't leave it blank. So the people, in order to get a question on the ballot, if you're not a legislator, you have to get 10,000 signatures or more. And you get a lot of people, you can either pay them to give you your signature, or you can just say, please give me your signature. And then once 10,000 signatures or more are approved, you can put your question in the ballot, which is great. Because as citizens, we want to be able to do that, and we want to be able to have our voices heard. We can either talk to our legislators and get our voices heard that way, or if we feel very strongly about something, we can get 10,000 signatures. It takes a little work, but you can get it on the ballot. So this is how these things get on the ballot. So if you don't respond, only the questions where people responded for or against these questions get counted. So if 1 million people had a ballot and only, let's say, 500 people responded either for or against, and out of those 500 people, 300 said for, then it goes in, okay? So your no vote doesn't count. So it's very important, I think, to look at it and see what the unintended consequences are of these questions. And I think that's why I wanted to make sure that we could talk to you and be here today. Having said that, I'm going to turn it over to Emma Evans, who's working with the Say No to B and D coalition that is formed by Ike Leggett, former county executive Ike Leggett. Most of us know him. And former Congresswoman, Republican Congresswoman Connie Morella. As well. So it's a bipartisan sort of coalition. And also David Blair, who is a business person, and myself, whom I also am a business person. So that's the coalition to vote no for B and D. And Emma Evans, I introduce as she's a person who's supporting that coalition, and she's here to talk to us a little bit more about what that's about. Thank you.
Yeah, just before I get started, Carmen, if you wouldn't mind to send the Zoom link to Maida and Councilmember Albornoz.
Okay, all right. Alrighty.
So I'm actually going to share my screen while we're working on that. And hopefully be able to get in view. Page display. Full screen mode. Okay. So as Carmen introduced already, this is the dialogue. Oh, sharing is pause. Bring your window to the front. Can everybody see my screen? Yes.
No, well, yeah, here it is. I have
You
to
see a
make,
slide?
yeah, I
Yes,
have to make.
Deborah.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So this is the dialogue on the 2020 election ballot initiatives. I'm working with Vote No on B and D. The website is www.votenooonband.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. This is currently being live streamed on Facebook and also recorded. So in case anybody wants to take a look at it later on, they can if they weren't able to make it today. And I'm basically just going to go over a couple of slides super quick. And are you getting the Zoom link to them, Carmen?
So I think because you signed in first, you are able to get to it better than me.
Okay. Give me one moment.
Oh, I think I can have it right there. I got it.
You got it? Okay.
I think,
Great.
yeah, I'm gonna forward this to Myra.
And send it to Gabe as well if you can.
Okay, I'm not sure which email, but I'll try.
I will tell you. She sent me the mobile.
Okay, so can you do that or what?
Yeah.
Okay. I have to forward it to the email.
I'm sending it to their cell phones now.
Okay.
Okay, yep, I think that was good. Perfect. Okay, so let me get back with this. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay. So moving right along, this is just an infographic that Councilmember Albornoz's office shared with us. We have it in English and Spanish. It's sort of a quick and easy way to remember how to handle these questions. There's a lot to think about when you're voting, especially right now, especially if you were to vote in person, which is a whole nother ballgame. So this sort of just makes it quick and easy. Definitely vote against B and D. And also this includes some information around why A and C are good to vote in favor of. So we'll get into a little bit more of the details about just what each of these things mean. It says they don't need to be confusing, but the fact of the matter is that they can be confusing. So we just want to sort of provide the basic information, and then Councilmember Albornoz, I'm sure, will go into a little more depth about why each of these things is so important. This is the same thing in Spanish. So question basics, where did they come from? So questions A and C are proposed charter amendments by an act of the county council. Questions B and D were actually introduced by petition, and in a county of over 1 million all you need is 10,000 signatures to make this happen. So questions A and B, just, on a very fundamental level, propose incompatible changes to section 305 of the county charter, and that's around the budget and taxes. So that affects how the county can afford to pay for things like education, health, and public safety. And then questions C and D affect aspects of the county charter that say how many council members each resident can vote for, and it also affects the number of districts and the overall number of council members. I use the word incompatible changes here just because it can get very confusing, as Carmen was saying earlier. You have 4 different questions that technically it looks like you can vote for all of them if you wanted to, but the fact of the matter is A and B can't both work together, and C and D can't both work together. So it's kind of an either or neither question, and that's not entirely clear when you're filling out your ballot. So just wanted to emphasize that A and B are incompatible and C and D are also incompatible. Let me just make sure. Is there anybody in the waiting room, Carmen? No? Okay.
So I don't see anybody in the waiting room right now.
Okay. Just making sure.
But I think
So
it would be something to you, to your email.
oh, it would show up in the Zoom app, but I don't see anything, so I think we're good.
Did we get Myra in yet?
No. I am. I'm sending the link again as we speak.
I just sent the links to Myra and Councilmember's personal email address.
Okay.
I sent it to the Gmail. You sent it to the Gmail though. Right.
Gmail, correct.
Okay. Alrighty. So as I was saying before, questions A and B affect section 305. So just to go over what section 305 even means, what that rule says is that every year the council must create a budget. Right now, 6 out of 9 votes are required to pass a budget that's more expensive than the one from the previous year, accounting for inflation. The council also has to adopt affordability guidelines for the budget. And I think Councilmember Albornoz just joined successfully. Is that right? Admit. Oh, there's a lot of Councilmember Albornoz joining. Let's see. Admit. Let's see. Interesting. Admit. Okay. I think we are good. Hello.
Hey.
Hi. Sorry about that.
No, it's our fault, but glad to be on.
Thank you for joining us. So thank you for being here today. Just to catch you up, we've talked a little bit about voting, started sort of introducing what's included in the ballot initiatives, and shared the infographics both in English and Spanish that Myra shared with us. And those are very helpful. Thank you. Oh, let me admit my.
So welcome, Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yes, thank you. And we are live streaming on Facebook.
Great.
So a lot of our audience is on Facebook, and wanted to let you know that we had a number of people that we normally don't have, which I'm very happy to. I know that you've been working hard on not only this, but I've been listening in on some of the council things, and there's a lot of things going on today, right? Not today, but just the whole last 2 weeks on growth and how are we going to be able to recover from the economy, the economic issues and things like that. And we're very interested, and I introduced earlier the fact that voting, you can register to vote until October 13th.
Mm-hmm.
And that voting for or against is very important, because if you don't answer the questions, then you're leaving the decision to those who did answer the questions, even if it's a small minority. So it's very important that you vote for or against. I belong to a coalition to say no to B and D with County Executive Ike Leggett and ex-Congresswoman Connie Morella. So it's a bipartisan coalition along with David Blair. And I know that you have been looking very deeply into these questions and seeing what's best for the county. So we're really looking forward to you talking to us and letting us know what you think and how do you think these questions are going to impact us.
Well, first, thank you, Gudman, for your leadership. Thank you to the Hispanic Chamber for all that you continue to do to support our community, to keep it thriving, especially during the recovery in the pandemic when so many county residents and businesses are hurting. We know that 170,000 county residents have filed for unemployment, and we just know the tremendous struggle that families are facing right now. And it's a testament to the Hispanic Chamber that you're continuing to show leadership on this and so many other issues. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our families go back a long way. So I really appreciate all of your leadership.
They do. Thank you.
So yes, there is understandably and correctly a lot of attention and focus on this election, primarily because of the federal election and the run for president. And as we know, there's a lot on the line on a number of different levels. But there are 4 ballot measures, local ballot measures, that I think it's critically important for county residents to pay attention to, because whether or not you're just a lay citizen, whether you're a business owner, whether you have kids in the school system, regardless of your socioeconomic income status, these 4 ballot measures are going to have a direct impact on you. And I happen to feel pretty strongly about them. And so I will share my perspective on these particular ballot measures and provide a little bit of context and background. So in that context, it's important to note that all you need is 10,000 certified signatures in a petition to get something on the ballot. And that is a very low threshold. That is 1% of our overall electorate. And that's something that our state legislature has looked to change, because it's a very low threshold as compared to so many other jurisdictions regionally and nationally. But because that threshold is low, there are efforts every 2 years during both the gubernatorial election cycle and the federal election cycle to address issues that are important to county residents. And this year is no different. I will focus first on questions A and B, which have to do with the tax code in Montgomery County, which I will acknowledge up front is complicated and a little difficult to follow. And so I will try to explain this in a way that it was explained to me so that I could understand it, and want to thank all of you again for your interest. So there's a gentleman that many county residents are familiar with named Robin Ficker, who has been around for a long time and has been successful over a number of different election cycles in placing items on the ballot. And he was successful once again in placing question B on the ballot. Now, question B would significantly hamper the county's AAA bond rating, would significantly really restrict the county's ability to address the recovery and many of the challenges that we are facing before that, and I'll explain why. Right now, the county has a cap on the amount of taxes that we can bring to county residents. That cap is connected to what's called the rate of inflation. The rate of inflation is set at the federal level, and it is notoriously very slow. And the county has absolutely no control over that particular rate. That scenario was established by a county council over 30 years ago and has really capped the county's ability to be able to expand revenue when it needs to. Now, currently, we can exceed that cap, but in order to do so, you have to have a unanimous vote. All 9 members of the county council have to support going above that cap. Now, that does not happen frequently. And whenever elected officials pose this, there is often political peril that comes with it for understandable reasons. Very few people want to have their taxes raised. But there are circumstances that call for us to have to do that sometimes as a community. The 2 most recent times that the county raised taxes above that cap were once during the recession, when the county social services were significantly strained, when thousands, tens of thousands of county residents were losing their homes because of the housing bubble, and we were experiencing unbelievable need in the community for things like food security, rental assistance, and just general support. And so the county executive at the time, who, as Carmen mentioned, has come out in opposition to question B, made the very difficult decision with the council at the time to raise revenue so that we could address that emergency. We could address those issues. That helped us get through that dark time. The other time, most recently, that the taxes were raised above the cap was when we received, about 4 or 5 years ago, a very, very unusually large number of new students that enrolled into our public school system. A number of unaccompanied minors fleeing violence from their home countries, seeking asylum in the United States. And the county did experience a need to address the additional needs of our school system at the time. And so once again, the decision was made to raise the cap to address the issues of our school system. That was important morally, but also from an economic development standpoint, because the #1 indicator of property values in any community across the country is the quality of the school system. And because of the strain on the school system, our elected officials at the time felt it was absolutely necessary to ensure that they were put in a position to meet the demands on that system. So those are the only 2 times in the last 12 or so years that the county has gone above that cap. But question B would make it impossible, even with the unanimous vote of all 9 council members, to go above that cap. Now, why is that important now? We are in the middle of a pandemic. We have a looming recession before us. As I mentioned earlier, hundreds of thousands of county residents have filed for unemployment. And we are all hoping for another round of federal stimulus. But because of the unbelievable conflict that is occurring in Congress right now, and the president, as recently as yesterday, tweeting that there would no longer be negotiations until after the election, the county may be in a position to once again have to step forward and address these emerging needs, as difficult as a decision as that may be, because we just can't let the number of families who are at risk of going over the cliff, of going over that cliff. So I urge the people on this call to study and analyze these issues, but to consider strongly not supporting question B, because it will, I think, impact our AAA bond rating. It will impact the county's ability to address those emerging emergencies that we are seeing right now, and in perpetuity, significantly hamper the county's ability to address needs, not just now, but in the future. California, Prince George's County, have had similar caps with very negative impacts. And we don't want to move backwards here in Montgomery County. Conversely, question A has been placed on the ballot, in large measure, to be candid, to counter question B. Question A, quite simply, would allow the county to establish the cap on revenue, not have it set by the rate of inflation. Again, a metric that we have no control over. The county would have the ability to set the cap at a rate that was reasonable and would still require a unanimous 9-member vote of the council to go above. And so we feel that this is important, and question B and question A are linked, and question A has the support of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. It has the support of progressive organizations. It has the support of realtors. And yes, it has the support of developers as well, who understand that ultimately you get what you pay for. And the high quality of life that we have here in Montgomery County, the highly effective, with challenges, not perfect, but especially as compared to other jurisdictions, the highly functioning government that we have here in Montgomery County must continue. And in order for it to continue, we need revenue. Question A gambles on ourselves, because as economic development grows, as we look at not just boosting Bethesda and but boosting other parts of our community, it would put the county in a better position to retain revenue that we have earned. So I urge county residents to support question A and oppose question B. So that's the first set of ballot measures. The second set are questions C and D. And once again, Carmen, I thank you for your leadership in opposition to question D. For a little bit of context and background, the county council was formed in the 1970s. And when it was initially formed, it had 5 members, each of which represented a geographic region in the county, but once they were elected, served the entire county at large. That system evolved to the one we have today, in which we have 5 council districts and 4 council members that serve at large, meaning they represent the entire county. I am one of those 4 at-large council members. It's important to note also that that structure has not changed since 1990. We have continued to have 5 district council members and 4 council members. Now, an effort was made, and a successful one, to get on the ballot question D, which would do away with the 4 at-large members of the council and keep and add 4 districts, making 9 districts. But what that would mean is that right now you can vote for 5 council members. With this plan, you would only be able to vote for 1. And the proponents of this include a group of special interests who are frustrated with the current system and the inability to influence elections in the way that they used to because of public financing, and would like to blow up the entire system. It's also made up of representatives from the Republican Party who view this as an opportunity to carve out at least 1, if not 2, conservative districts to add political diversity onto the council. And it's also being supported by a number of people who live in the northern part of the county who, to a large extent, I understand their frustration, are frustrated that only once has an at-large member of the county resided north of Gaithersburg. And so that coalition has formed to support question D. Now, I am strongly opposed to question D, not just because I'm an at-large member of the council. And yes, I love my job, some days more than others. I feel like I'm growing into it. But I oppose question D for several reasons. One, it will create a parochial system on the council, and people complain about things not progressing fast enough now. It's going to take even longer to be able to move things forward. As we look at capital budget projects, as we look at transportation projects, having a parochial system, I think, will be significantly to the detriment of the county. The second reason I'm strongly opposed to D is because as an at-large member and candidate this past 2 years ago, I remind everybody there were 32 candidates in the at-large county council race. And a number of the folks that worked at my campaign can attest to the benefit of having had the opportunity to campaign countywide for this seat. I was in over 113 living rooms over the course of 9 months, from the eastern part of the county to Darnestown, to Poolesville, to Germantown, to Bethesda, to Rockville, to Silver Spring. And what I appreciated throughout that entire process was how connected everything is. And I learned so much information that I have found to be incredibly valuable as a member of this council. And I think it makes me a better legislator. And that perspective and that synergy between at-large and district council members is really important. And frankly, it works. It's not perfect, but it works. And so I think adding 9 districts will take us significantly backwards and in many ways segregate the county racially, which would be a travesty. So to counter question D, question C has also been put on the ballot by the council. Question C would add 2 districts and add 2 council members to the Montgomery County Council, making 11 council members with 7 in unique districts, 4 at large. So you would still be able to vote for 5 council members. And this would take into account the fact that the county has grown by population over 50% since 1990. And the districts, as they're currently constructed, are large, to be fair, as compared to other jurisdictions. So question C would allow for 2 additional districts, leaving a smaller percentage of constituents within each one. But still that synergy of at-large versus district would be in place. I'll note one last thing before answering any questions that folks may have. And that again pertains to questions C and D. Every 10 years, once the census is complete, per the county's charter, the county council actually appoints a committee that conducts an analysis of the census to determine how to redraw the lines every 10 years. And so this year, that committee will once again be formed, and they will determine, based on which ballot measures passed, whether to reconfigure 5 districts, 7 districts, or 9 districts. And so you may see maps being presented by people who support 9 districts that split the county into 9 geographic quadrants, but that is absolutely not necessarily how those districts will be drawn. They will be based on the recommendation of this committee and based on the density and population of the county. So there's a lot on the line in this election. And I know that's a lot of information and a lot to process on top of everything else we have to process right now. But I urge the members of the Hispanic Chamber, your friends, your family, your neighbors, to read more about these issues, to educate yourselves on these issues, and to pay attention, because this is going to have a serious impact on our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Albornoz. Okay, I have a question here. Wouldn't it be more difficult if we got C passed? Wouldn't it be more difficult to get all 11, because then you'd end up with 11 council members? Wouldn't it be more difficult then for passing A or B? In other words, you now have not 11 council members that have to agree in order to get something through. So wouldn't say voting for C make it more difficult where you need to have a total vote?
I mean, it could, but I think that the natural progression of the evolution of the county warrants, taking a close look at adding the 2 districts. It's important to note too, I didn't note that if C and D both pass, then it stays status quo. We continue with the current structure that we have in place. And the same is true of questions A and B. If both pass, then neither move forward because they essentially cancel each other out. So, but
It's fair
yeah.
to say that it's either A or B or C or D.
correct. So, but it is a fair point, Godman, that there, we would have to reconfigure the council committees because currently we have 6 with 3 council members participating in each committee. So there would have to be a restructuring. And it is also undeniably true that there will be additional staff that come with the additional seats that would be on the council. So there is a downside, but I think the pros, in my opinion, outweigh the cons.
So it'd be more expensive to have 11 council members.
It would.
Okay. Any other questions out there? Emma, do you have any other questions on your list?
Sure, yeah, I do. So let me see. The question that I have is the current rule, I guess, for 305 on the tax law, it currently is based on limiting revenue. Is that right?
Mhm.
And I think the change under A would make it so that it would be based on a rate.
Correct.
And so that seems to me to be an important distinction in terms of future growth of the county. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. It would not be capped at an arbitrary rate that we have no control over, but it would be at a rate set by the council and set by the county and based on what's actually happening in the county. And so what we would work to do is have a rate that incentivizes the county's economic development opportunities. So we have a fair amount of growth right now in Bethesda, but we have not been able to grow in the way we would like to grow in other parts of the county. Question A would give us greater flexibility in securing the revenue that would come with that growth in other parts of the county.
Okay, so I have a question here from one of the listeners that says, why should I vote for my taxes to increase? I know, it's a simple question.
Well, question A would not increase your taxes. Next year, the rate would be set at what it is now, and there would be an evaluation, and we would review. But I remind everyone that we have a very high quality of life in Montgomery County. We have an excellent school system. We have an excellent police department. We have an excellent library system. We have a world-class park system and recreation system. And all of those things come at a cost. And the county has been able to overcome the cap as it has been currently set. But question A gives us a lot more flexibility, and the rate would be set so that it's really within those developments that we would see the highest area of growth. And so taxes would remain the same for next year.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions that have come up on the computer. So if anybody of our group here has any other questions, I'd welcome any question from our live audience.
I'm wondering how our like per capita, sort of council members per capita in Montgomery County compares to other areas. How are we doing in terms of representation?
Good question, Emma. So the District of Columbia, I believe, has 13 council members. Prince George's County has 11. And I should note, too, that Prince George's County recently added at-large members of the council because they had had the parochial district exclusive system for political generations, and finally were able to overcome that. So those folks are looking at us kind of scratching their heads saying, really, you want to go back to the system we had? Go at it. Like that's, and so it is a cautious tale. And I should note, DC and Montgomery County are a little bit of apples and oranges because DC also is essentially the state and the county, by virtue of the way that their government is structured. But, the fact remains that Their population is about 700,000 people, a little more than half of Montgomery County, and they have 13 council members, and we have 9.
Okay. All right. So basically, the end result is when somebody looks at the ballot, what if they would like us your advice? You are saying say yes, no to the 4 questions.
Correct. I'm encouraging folks to strongly consider voting for question A and question C, and voting against question B and question D.
A good point, because I know we're saying yes, no, but it's really for or against, right?
Right.
So it is for, against, for, against.
You got it. You got it.
All right. Well, thank you. I think that I'm going to make sure that that happens on my ballot. And I'm hoping that other folks will feel the same way, or will reach out and ask more questions. And we're always here at, oh, wait. Here's one. I live in Germantown. What will be the advantage of adding 2 more council members to me?
So as we look at the district makeup, I am confident that the northern districts are going to be adjusted. And I'll also note too, the concern that there hasn't been an at-large member from the northern part of the county. I remind everybody that Marilyn Balcombe, who came just a couple thousand votes short of coming in 4th place during the primary, lives in Germantown. And she is actually chairing the committee that is opposing D and supporting C, because part of the naturally occurring evolution of the political landscape in Montgomery County is that there is a lot more people that live in the northern part of the county than there was 10 years ago. And so you're starting to see a lot more infrastructure civically. And I've been very impressed with the level of organizing that's happening in the northern part of the county. And so I strongly suspect that at least one of the next 4 at-large seats, and there will be a vacancy, just by virtue of term limits, is going to come from the northern part of the county. And there will likely be smaller districts, so closer connection to your council member as a result of whatever happens with the census. And if we add 2 districts, it's very likely that one of those would touch and impact the northern part of the county.
Would the other part be around Poolesville or Clarksburg?
It depends on the density that comes back from the census. There's a strong chance.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, okay. So this listener who lives in Germantown will be impacted if you go on yes for B, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Well,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your explanation, and we look forward to seeing more of the great things that you do every day, and I really appreciate your hard work. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.